you know why you're here? I said, no. They go, you've been positively ID'd as a South Shore slasher. You're a serial killer. You've hit women in Milton, Quincy, Boston, New Bedford. We've got a warrant to search your house, search your car, a warrant for your arrest. As soon as you get behind those bars, it's front page everywhere.
I'm Sean O'Brien, General President of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters.
Put your helmets on, buckle your chin straps. It's a full contact sport.
We're going to find out who has a better bad idea. We all know about police brutality. It's been prevalent over the last 4 or 5 years in major news stories all over this country. But today on Better Bad Ideas, we have a special guest who has lived police brutality, whose father was murdered at the hands of police officers in a small town south of Boston. Taking a negative into a positive, today we'll be joined by the Marshfield Police Chief, Phil Tavares, on Better Bad Ideas. Let's get into it. 1987, Carver, Mass., which is about 40 miles south of downtown Boston. You and your family were victims of police brutality, which resulted ultimately in your father's death. What happened?
My father had married his second wife. There were problems in the house. She had obtained a restraining order on the Friday the 13th of November at noontime. She came to the house twice since she had the restraining order, and she had not turned it over to the police.
So she goes to court, gets a restraining order, and she is actually serving that restraining order before the police did?
No, she went to the house twice, never turned the restraining order over to the police, so obviously she wasn't afraid.
Okay.
So it was a bogus restraining order. It wasn't until after there was an altercation at the house between her and my father and my grandmother.
And what was the altercation? Because I read somewhere that a shoe was thrown at your father in an effort to avoid any further conflict. He contacted the Carver police or left the scene and contacted the Carver police?
He didn't have a phone because earlier in the week, she took the phone, smashed him over the head with it, and left the house with it. So he had to go to a neighbor's house to call the police.
So this is 1987, so it's not an iPhone she smashed him over the head with?
No, it was one of the big dial phones.
Okay, so what did he do after this altercation?
My grandmother left because she got hit in the face with the sneaker, and she went to the police station. My father went next door to the neighbor's house to call the police for help. Lo and behold, his second wife at the time went to the Carver police station and said, I have a restraining order that she had for 10 hours and never turned it over, and went to the house twice in between. At that time, 3 police officers came. My father thought they were there to help him. They told him that he had to vacate the home immediately. He was confused, didn't understand that, and asked to see the restraining order. He told them that he had epilepsy and he needed to get his medication. They wouldn't let him. They said he has to leave immediately. He said, I need my medicine. My life is dependent upon it. He turned to go into the bedroom. He was tackled over a giant coffee table by one officer, and there were 3 officers on scene. He was kicked repeatedly in the abdomen, all over the body. He was hit with clubs. He was punched. He had his hair pulled and his head smashed against a heater, and he was actually dragged out of the house. And the neighbors witnessed this.
Now, this is a guy that worked 2 jobs, had tremendous respect for police and the authority. I believe he wanted to be a police officer, always worked in security jobs, was a mechanic. So he had no prior history, didn't drink, didn't do drugs, just a hardworking man. They show up. He says, I need my medicine, my epilepsy medicine, turns to go in the bedroom, and then all hell breaks loose. They beat him, as you just stated. What happens between the transport from the residence to the police station? And what time of day is this about?
This is about 10:30 at night. And from the time they called off, meaning leaving their cruisers to get to my father's house, and the time they called back in with my father in the back, only 11 minutes had transpired. There was no de-escalation. There was no reading the restraining order, explaining things to him. It was just hands-on, you're leaving right now, and a beating occurred, a severe beating.
And how big is the Carver Police Department? 40 miles south of Boston.
A very small police department.
Okay, so everybody probably knows everybody down there. It's probably a tight-knit community, well-controlled probably by the police chief and the command staff. So he gets transported to the station for booking and incarceration, I guess, right before a court date?
That's right. However, when it was discovered that there was no video of the booking, they called that an error in procedure. They put him in a cell where the video camera didn't work properly. And then when I went to bail him out the next morning, the video camera and audio recording device, nobody could find the tape of that.
I know that whenever you're transported from point A to point B, you go to a holding cell. There's an officer in charge that does your paperwork, makes certain everything's accurate. You get put in a holding cell. That officer in charge is responsible for your safety at that point in time. So they bring your dad in, all beat up, bruised up, visible, because I think I read in one of the reports that an officer made a reference, like, couldn't believe what he looked like, and they didn't get him medical attention. So the officer in charge clearly didn't really care or acknowledge the fact that your dad got beat up pretty bad.
That's right. And in fact, they actually called the bail commissioner and requested that he not be bailed. And it wasn't until the next morning when the new sergeant in charge came into the station, didn't even know there was anybody in the holding cells, couldn't believe what he saw, was quoted in the police reports as, you could clearly see the man was in agony. He was a whipped man. He was in desperate need of medical attention. And all the police officers are paramedics, and he couldn't understand why they would leave a man in a cell like that.
So how many people are on duty on Friday the 13th at 10:35 in a small, pretty quiet community? Can't be a lot of people in that police station at that point in time, but an officer in charge and whoever's on duty.
Yeah, my guess would be that there's the officer in charge and 2 cars on the road.
And those are the 2 cars that responded to your dad's house. Those are the 2 people that are responsible for the beating your dad took that night.
3 responded, so I would say all 3 are responsible.
Okay. So take us through, you get the phone call.
I get the phone call that my father was arrested from my uncle and that he needed help. We called down there. I spoke to the sergeant that was in charge.
And how old are you at this point in time?
I was 1 month into my 18th birthday.
And you saw your dad the day before, gave him a big hug, said we're going to have plans, we're going to go fishing, everything else.
Before he passed, that's right.
So you go to bail him out. You see the beating that he took. You knew, and your dad was a big, burly guy, probably could handle himself. And you look at a beaten man. What is going through your mind at this point in time?
I was absolutely horrified. He couldn't walk on his own from the cell out to the booking area where he was going to be released. I had to carry him out there. He couldn't put his belt through the belt loops. He couldn't see. His eye had a big egg on it. It was terrible.
What did you do when you picked him up? That was Saturday morning. You bail him out. You take him, your mother and yourself take him right to the hospital?
Immediately take him to Jordan Hospital in Plymouth. I sat in the back seat and I actually had to hold his shoulders because he kept slumping over.
Where is the ex-wife that, started this whole mess? Where is she in this whole picture when this is all going on? Nowhere to be found?
Nowhere to be found. But
Okay.
what's interesting is that she drove a school bus, and the school bus was always parked in the back of the police station. And she was very friendly with all the police officers.
So that's another collusion type of theory, which we'll get into later on. But so you go to the hospital. They examine your father. What are the doctors and medical staff saying when they see him?
They treated his eye, they treated his wrist, and eventually released him. He told everybody exactly what happened. I was there for the whole thing. He was released on Saturday, and then he started to get worse at home, so we brought him back again. They kept him overnight, and I picked him up Sunday morning. And then Sunday, he had to go back to the hospital again. So at this point, he's been to the hospital, the emergency room, 3 times in 2 days. Mm-hmm. So he was released on Sunday. Monday, his condition was too bad. He couldn't be arraigned. He was in terrible shape. On Tuesday, he was arraigned in Wareham District Court.
So he walks into court.
Well, he couldn't really walk in. He had to be carried in.
Carrying him to court. He's visibly beat up. I mean, there's got to be bruises and eyes shut and everything else. Did anybody in that court system, when they seen him, you've got prosecutors from Plymouth County. Did anybody question what happened to this man?
Only my father's lawyer at the time. He couldn't believe the condition that he was in.
And what did the lawyer say?
He said, obviously we got to have him arraigned quickly and get him home.
Now, there's police reports that have to be filled out the night there's an incident, right? And what do those police reports look like? Because they have to present them in court, or the prosecutor has to read them into court.
Knowing what I know now, I can tell you that they were a joke. They lacked any detail. They skated around anything that happened.
And you have those reports, right?
I have all of them.
Okay. So what did they say?
They basically just said that there was a slight scuffle at the house, and that was it.
This episode is brought to you by Catches Law Group, proud advocates for injured workers and their families since 1986. If you've been hurt on the job, navigating the workers' comp system can feel like fighting an uphill battle. That's where Catches Law comes in. They've recovered over $3 billion for hardworking people just like you, and they don't back down when your rights are on the line. They know what it means to stand shoulder to shoulder with unions and workers across the country. Because at Catches Law, it's not just about compensation, it's about justice. Learn more at catcheslaw.com. That's KECHES law.com. And I can tell you firsthand, I've seen many, many workers injured from repetitive lifting, bending, and stooping. Catches Law stands shoulder to shoulder, making certain that our members understand the process. More importantly, that they get the compensation and justice that they deserve while they're injured. Learn more at catcheslaw.com. That's KECHES law.com. A slight scuffle in the house, and I think I read somewhere in here that we had a pulmonary embolism, lacerated spleen, hematoma, diaphragm, 500 cc's of blood in the chest cavity, left lobe liver damaged, hematoma in the bowels, and hematoma to the flanks. That doesn't sound like a minor incident to me.
No, the medical examiner said it was multiple abdominal trauma, enough to kill the man, and that the only way that could have happened was from a severe beating or a really bad car accident.
So your dad leaves court, goes home. What is he charged with? Domestic assault, domestic violence? What is he charged with?
No, he wasn't charged with that. He was charged with assault and battery on police officers and violating the restraining order.
Okay. So the cops claimed that he was a combative person. They had to use force to detain him, and he's charged with assault and battery on a police officer.
Well, that didn't come out until later on when they were forced to do reports after his death.
Okay.
Initially, it was just a very generic, bland report that didn't really describe anything.
So they got a do-over.
Yes, they did after he was dead.
Okay. So he dies 4 or 5 days later.
Yep, on a Wednesday, and I was there just prior to him dying.
At his home.
At his home. He made reference to giving me some gold pens, telling me that I'd need them in the future, and I couldn't understand that at the time, but I do now.
So he passes away.
Well, as soon as I leave, he gets up, he goes into the bathroom, he starts splashing water on his face. He comes out into the kitchen, he drops to his knees in front of his parents, my grandparents, and my uncle, and says, help me, I can't breathe, help me, I can't breathe. Collapses on the floor, his eyes roll back in his head, and he starts turning purple.
So at this point in time, call the police again, call emergency, they come get him, take him to the hospital, right? Pronounced dead shortly thereafter.
Yes.
So initially they rule his death as what?
Initially it was ruled that he died from a pulmonary embolism, so that was the cause of death. The manner of death was undetermined.
So, but the undetermined, as we know and we've read, it can be determined that it was the result of a vicious beating by 3 police officers that night.
That's what the medical examiner believed, and that's what we believe.
And when did the medical examiner take control of the body and do his examination?
The next day. So he died on the 18th of November. He did it on the 19th.
Okay. So the medical examiner's report is pretty thorough compared to the initial police reports, and then the do-over obviously looks a little bit more aggressive towards your dad. What's the next step in this whole process? Forget anything else. Like, what is going through your mind right now?
Rage.
As you're an only child. Your idol, who, my dad passed away 13 years ago, luckily went to bed, never woke up. But that's a guy that was my idol. I often think back about them. I think about the lessons learned, the lessons taught. You're an only child. That's the man figure in your life. He's gone. What are you thinking?
I was full of rage at the time. I was in shock. I couldn't believe that it happened. And I remember exactly the time that it set in what really happened. It was at his wake, and everybody had left, and I was by myself, and I was speaking with him, and I rubbed his head. And it was at that point I realized his skull had been sawed open because it wasn't completely closed. And it was at that moment that reality set in.
And who sawed his head open? The medical examiner? Or
yes,
just to make, to see what kind of trauma was
during the autopsy
inflicted on him.
Yeah, during the autopsy.
So the medical examiner's report comes out. What's the next step as far as trying to get justice for this? Because look, we know, especially, during the 80s, before all the Rodney King and the police brutality stuff, there was a code blue or a blue, what do they call it? What do they call that?
The blue wall of silence?
Blue wall of silence, yes, the blue wall of silence. So pretty hard to make accusations against police officers back then for brutality, especially when the system is kind of rigged back then. And, I'm very pro-police. I think police officers, 99.9% of them actually do their job. It's that, 1% that give everybody a bad name. But you had quite a hill to climb right now to get justice for your dad back then and now. What was that like, and what were the steps? How did you go about this? I mean, you rage. I assume one of the quotes that I read, your exact quote was, "I wanted them to die just like my father died, and I wanted to be the one who did it."
I did.
Okay. Explain.
Well, I had faith in the criminal justice system that it would prevail. I waited. They launched an investigation. The police chief at the time said that he was doing a complete and full investigation, but he stands by his officers. Sounds a little biased to me.
So he stands by his officers because, from what I understand, Coverup Police Department back then, it wasn't a well-trained department. It was who you know. That's how you got on the job. So it was a pretty tight-knit group.
Very much so.
Right. So you have faith in the justice system. 4 or 5 months go by, you don't hear anything. What are you doing about it? What are you thinking? And I mean, we know what you're thinking. The rage, you want vengeance, but you still have faith in the justice system. What are you doing about it? You contacting the Plymouth County District Attorney O'Malley at the time? Are you reaching out to anybody? Your dad's lawyer? What is going on this whole time?
Yeah, I was in constant contact with my father's attorney, and I was waiting, and I was seething, and I was controlling my impulse to do things that, wouldn't have been good. And I was just hoping. I was just hoping that the right thing would be done. And then 4 months later, after a complete bogus investigation by the state police where they did not even interview the 3 people that were involved in the beating, they didn't interview the neighbor that witnessed some of it. They skipped over major portions of the investigation. And the state pathologist came in to review some of the stuff from the medical examiner, and he based everything on speculation. There were numerous mistakes in the report, from where he lived to the day that he died, the day that the autopsy was. It was just the sloppy work all the way around.
So you've got the district attorney's office involved doing an investigation, which the state police, whenever there's a death, the state police handle those investigations, whatever county it is. You had a corporal by the name of Robert Kilpeck, who was the investigator, who never interviewed any of the witnesses, never interviewed the 3 officers involved, never interviewed anybody, but drew a conclusion that no foul play or no police brutality or anything else like that.
He discredited the one police officer, the sergeant that came on duty at 8 o'clock in the morning that saw the condition my father was in. He discredited him.
And that was a sergeant that came in and said, "I can't believe this man has not gotten medical attention yet."
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the only one that told the truth about the whole thing. He also discredited the medical examiner.
The medical examiner who was trained and who does this for a living and actually wrote a report that supported the theory that your father was beat to death.
That's right.
So was this the blue wall of silence or blue code of silence at this point in time in your eyes?
I was told that it definitely was a cover-up. Some of the people are deceased now, and they came forward with some information. Yeah, it definitely was. And it was multiple people were involved in it. And the only person that told the truth, they discredited.
So they never moved forward on the case. Officers still stayed employed. Life goes on in Carver. You're living a life where you are pissed off. You want vengeance.
That's right.
You want, these people held accountable, and you want to do it yourself.
I did.
What were you going to do?
Well, I could tell you this. My mother is a wonderful woman, just a wonderful woman. She took this really bad because she kind of blamed herself. If she hadn't divorced my father, he would have never met the other wife. And my father died on what would have been my mother and father's 20th wedding anniversary. So she had a breakdown, and for many years she was seeking help from different places. So I found myself alone. A young kid.
Yeah, 18 years old, where you come from, North Quincy. Your peer group probably doesn't understand what you're going through, can't relate to it. Not a lot of people you can talk to because you probably don't have trust in many at this point in time. So you've got a pretty big task at hand in your mind on what you're going to do, how you're going to deal with it, and what are going to be ultimately the consequences if you act.
Yeah, I initially didn't talk to a lot of people about it because my father had never been arrested or in trouble with the police. But when you hear about something like this, he was made out to be some bad guy that he wasn't. So I thought about things, and I wasn't impulsive, and I planned some things, and I came to that junction in the road where this way would have taken me to either prison or death, or this way I could make a negative situation a positive one. And, I thought about what my father always told me. He always had 2 or 3 jobs. He didn't have much money. He worked hard, and he always told me, Phil, we don't have much, but the one thing we have is our name. Don't ever do anything to tarnish that. I thought about that. I thought about what he might want for me and for him, and I decided to take the path to become chief of police.
Right, but prior to you becoming chief of police, you, in between your ascension to law enforcement, but short time period between your dad's death, or murder as we should call it, right?
Yes.
Your dad's murder, and you becoming a police officer, you had another unflattering interaction with police, correct?
I had multiple ones.
Well, let's explain it to us.
Again, being an only child and having the house to myself, my house was kind of the clubhouse, and my friends would come over and we'd hang out, we'd rent movies. So I was at Blockbuster Video one night, and I was standing in line, and
Now, when you rented movies, were there adult beverages involved in these movies?
Sure was.
Okay, just
checking. It was
checking.
from Club 59 was the name of my house. So I was waiting in line. I get up to the counter, and they said, "Oh, our computers are down. You're going to have to wait a few minutes." Next thing I know, there's 2 police cars out front, Quincy Police. They come in. I see them talk to the manager. They come over to me. They said, "Can we talk to you for a minute? Can you step away from the counter? Do you have any ID on you?" I had no idea what this was about.
Now, was your dad's case publicized back then?
It was the front page of every single newspaper. It was on the news every night for a long period of time. And my family also created People Against Police Brutality, and we protested outside the police station multiple times.
What police station?
Carver.
Okay, so Carver is probably about 25 miles south of Quincy. And Quincy PD, where you grew up, Quincy Police, who, by the way, are a very good department.
I agree.
You're coming out of Blockbuster Video. Everybody knows who you are. right? Because it's been a public case, and now you're walking out and they're asking you for your name, identification, and you have no idea why they're doing this to you, right?
No idea.
So what happens?
They just tell me I fit the description of somebody they're looking for, and the detectives will call me in the morning. First thing in the morning, the phone rings.
So is it going through your mind because of the protests, because of the activism, trying to get justice for your dad? Again, we talk about the blue wall of silence. Are you thinking this has anything to do with some of your proactive stances against police brutality and stuff like that?
I don't think that crossed my mind. I thought I'd go in there. They'd obviously know whoever they're looking for, they're going to know it wasn't me. So I go in. The next thing you know, I'm getting my fingerprints taken. I'm getting photographs taken. I'm brought into a room with there's 3 police officers, and they start asking me questions.
Do you know any of these guys?
No. They start asking me all kinds of questions. Obviously, they read me my rights. You know, do you own a knife? I'm like, yeah, I own guns too.
You fish, you hunt. Why wouldn't you?
Do you own a ski mask? Yeah, I have a ski mask. You know, do you always wear a baseball hat? I'm like, a lot.
Do you think that's why your hairline's kind of receded a little bit?
I think so.
Yeah, mine too.
You think it's a little bit?
Yeah, just a lot.
So then they said, where were you some night in April? And I think this was June or July. I'm like, you know, I don't know. What day of the week was it? Saturday night. I said, okay. One or two things. I was either with my girlfriend or I was bartending at Narcissus. So they said, well, you know, okay. You know why you're here? I said, no. They go, you've been positively ID'd as a South Shore slasher. You're a serial killer. You've hit women in Milton, Quincy, Boston, New Bedford. We've got a warrant to search your house, search your car, a warrant for your arrest. As soon as you get behind those bars, it's front page everywhere. And I said, I would never do anything like that. And the questioning went on for hours and hours and hours.
So what's a time frame between when your dad died and this interaction with the police?
It was within a year.
Within a year. So you have a very negative initial dealing with the Coverup Police Department who murdered your dad. Then you have this interaction where you're at Blockbuster, I assume probably getting like a PG-13 movie. You come out, cops grab you, say, we're going to talk to you tomorrow. You go down there, and you're being accused of being a serial killer.
And rapist.
Those are 2 pretty negative interactions with the police. So how do you beat the case on this one?
Fortunate enough that they called Narcissus and they got a manager on the phone and they told them that I was a witness of a car accident during this particular week. Could you tell us the days and times that he worked? And fortunately, I was working on that day that they were looking at.
So did they eventually catch the South Shore slasher?
Yeah. You want to know how they caught him?
I would love to hear this.
They had a task force meeting with all the local police, state police, district attorney's office at a diner in Quincy, just having coffee, discussing the case. And one of the Boston cops looks in the back at a guy washing the dishes. It was him.
No kidding.
Just by chance. He was one of the 20,000 Cuban refugees that came over.
So
to Miami.
Right. So there's going to be this straight. So you're 19 years old, getting accused of being a South Shore murderer or rapist with women.
Mm-hmm.
They catch the actual guy that does it.
Mm-hmm.
Did they call you up and say, hey, sorry, my bad?
No, I had to call them and ask them, am I clear now? Oh, yeah, you're all set. That's it.
So 2 bad interactions with police.
Very much so.
You're 19 years old, right? Probably confused on what you want to do in life at this point. You're filled with rage and hatred. You want vengeance for your dad, but you want to take a negative and turn it into a positive. Was there a defining moment where you said, you know, I can't go down this road? You know, you remember your dad's statement, we've got a good name, do not do anything to ever tarnish it. And I think that's a lesson that most parents try and instill in their children. And yet, you take probably we would call the road less traveled, the one that's more difficult, but it's going to be more rewarding at the end. Was there a defining moment that triggered that, along with, you know, turning a negative into a positive? Something happened in your life and say, I'm going to do this because I want to show people that not all cops, not all police are like this.
Yes. I think at the time I was so angry, I was painting all the police with the same brush. And that was wrong. You know, as time went on, I became more clear as to what really happened. And there's bad people in every profession.
So in this time frame, did you listen to like NWA, like Fuck the Police and stuff like that?
I was listening to all of it.
All right.
We were doing some crazy stuff. I mean, growing up in North Quincy, jumping off the quarries, you know, drinking up the rock or the golf course, you know, doing things that kids our age in the city do.
So tell us your start into law enforcement. Now everybody knows the story. To your point, you're going to school, taking liberal arts, and then you switch to criminal justice. Tell us what happened.
I wanted to pursue the highest level of education that I could in the field, and I wanted to become not only a police officer, but the police chief, so I could make a difference.
So 19 years old, you're taking criminal justice, and you're saying to yourself, I want to be the police chief.
Yeah.
Did you know where or what town or what
I said
city?
Marshfield.
Why Marshfield?
Because I love the town. It's full of great people. It's got beautiful beaches. It's a place that I used to go to in the summer, and it brought me a lot of joy.
So were there any mentors along the road when you decided to go down this path to be a police officer?
There sure were. Chief William Sullivan, who served as chief for 28 years there. He became a mentor, a father-like figure, and a friend.
So you joined the police force in 1994 as a part-time police officer. Then you were appointed full-time police officer. 95, you become the sergeant of the midnight shift in 1999, and then rose up through the ranks, I believe, lieutenant captain. And then ultimately, at a young age, 2004, you were named chief of police of Marshfield. Now, Marshfield is probably 35 miles or 30 miles south of Boston. Huge town. What was that like?
You know, I thought that that was going to be the moment that everything was fulfilled.
So there was going to be closure. You felt achieving your highest goal that you set for yourself at 19, being the victim and left fatherless because of police brutality. You thought that this was going to be the pinnacle of your career. This is what you wanted. You achieved your goal. But it didn't suppress the feelings that you still had, the animosity, but more importantly, the closure that didn't exist. So you're in a pretty influential position where you deal with all kinds of law enforcement. You're dealing with district attorneys. You're dealing with other chiefs and other police departments. You're dealing with federal authorities on different cases. Did they all know what happened? Did they all know your ascension from, being once a person of interest in a murder, serial murder, raping spree, the victim of a father who's murdered, now you're the chief of police?
No, they didn't. And I kept it quiet until we had the protests.
And why did you keep it quiet? Did you think people would view you as getting where you were because there was sympathy towards what happened to your father? Or was this could be viewed at, hey, he kept his mouth shut, didn't hold the police accountable. This is his reward.
I think I viewed it that, everybody that knows me knows that, I studied hard. I got the highest exam scores. I put everything into it. I made it happen. If you believe it, you can achieve it. If you dream it, you can become it. And that's what I did.
I know me personally, when I have struggles or there's trials, tribulations, we don't bury ourselves in alcohol or anything else. I know I bury myself in work. And, I know I read some interesting quotes about your life in your career, is that you set goals. And I think those goals were to suppress the anger and animosity that you held, and you didn't want to hold on to that animosity. So you would set these goals. I'm going to become the police chief. I'm going to get my master's degree. I'm going to do these things. And we all do that. I mean, when I'm having tough times in life, we all do. I bury myself in work. I bury myself in work and tasks and everything else. So you do that. Your goal, one of your goals as police chief was to become, which is an interesting story in itself, because 2005, you're the chief. You still don't have closure to what happened in your life. And the people that are responsible are still walking around like nothing happened. Some of them are still police officers. Some of them have ascended from the sergeant in charge that night that didn't do anything for your father, becomes the chief of police in Carver. And you are going for your master's degree. You know all this, haven't told anybody about it. And you go for your master's degree. This is a great story. What happened when you go for your master's degree, the first class?
I sat down and the instructor started reading the names of the people that were in the class. And he said one name, which was one of the officers that was involved in my father's case, was the officer that was in charge, was sitting right there in the seat next to me.
How did you not confront that person at that point in time?
Oh, I wanted to. I wanted to. But I suppressed it because I focused on my goals and I didn't want to do anything that would screw that up.
So you focused on your goals, and 2018-19, Black Lives Matter is, George Floyd is killed at the hands of the police with Minnesota.
Yes.
So that started a nationwide Black Lives Matter movement where there were protests all over the place. How did that affect you, and how did that affect where you actually revisited what happened to your dad? Can you explain that?
I can. That was a very difficult time in policing for all of us. In fact, it was some people were embarrassed or afraid to tell anybody they were police officers because we were being painted as brutal, racist people that are out there to do harm to people. When in fact we're the good guys that are there to protect people, and they were viewing one thing that happened.
But can you blame people for that? I mean,
yeah, I actually can.
But I mean, you look back in 1991, right?
Yeah.
Our age group, the protests, and I mean, in the 70s, they had busing in Boston, everything, protests like that. But the most high profile case was Rodney King.
That's right.
And I mean, he took a severe beating.
He did.
He took a severe beating. It was on TV. And those white cops that beat him all got acquitted, right? So you can see the lack of faith in society, especially in the black community, when it comes to police officers. Now, that was probably the highest level of protest that we saw in the police. And then it kind of was quiet up until George Floyd's situation, where he died at the hands of the police.
That's right.
So that started a whole movement. So people remembered the Rodney King stuff. My point to all this is, can you blame society that has witnessed a vicious beating? You have another person that's killed at the hands of the police. There is some fear and animosity, and there's probably been other issues all over the country. So the public support of police diminished considerably.
That's right. But the important thing to remember is that the people are the police and the police are the people. That's Sir Robert Peel. Okay. We're, fathers, brothers, sons, coaches, we're people. And in every profession, people make up, right? So there's bad apples in every profession, right? Now, just because something happened in another part of the country, all of us across the country that were police officers were taking the blame for that.
Well, you get back to what we talked about earlier. You get back to the blue wall of silence, right? And, that's widely talked about, has been widely talked about forever. In every issue where there's a officer involved shooting or someone dies at the hand of police, there's always this theory that the conspiracy that there's a cover-up because the cops are all connected. So you're seen as one no matter what.
Yeah, and that's wrong. And that's the way that I was viewing them. Mm-hmm. I viewed them that way too. I hated all of them. But my thought process at the time was not correct, and it was full of emotion and anger. And I think that that's what happened with a lot of people around the country. Mm-hmm. So I felt that it was necessary. I felt compelled to come out and say, you know what? This story hasn't been told yet, okay? I once hated police.
So where's your wife in all this? I mean, your wife has been with you the majority of adult life. She knows what you're going through. And she knows emotionally this is having an effect on your life. But all the while, you're still executing these goals you set for yourself. She's got to be a pretty strong person. Where is she in all this? It must have been peaks and valleys before you make this, public in 2019.
Yeah, so she knew the story from pretty much our first date, which was back in 1988, and she was very supportive all along the way. Very supportive.
Mm-hmm. So, what triggers you to go public?
The outrage from the public against the police making accusations about all of us that aren't true. And I said, nobody's told both sides of the stories. You're either on one side or the other. The story needs to come out that we're not all bad people. And hopefully people would start thinking about that and not paint the police all with the same brush.
So there's a report that there's a rally, I believe it was, or Black Lives Matter protest in Marshfield. And, through this whole protest, in your mind, are you thinking about how can I avenge my father's murder? How can I avenge, our reputation? And you are protecting the police at the same time. How do you navigate through? Because you got a couple different masters you're trying to serve here. You're trying to serve the constituents that you are responsible for in your community and support, the rallies and the protests, but also protect and support the men and women that work for you as police officers. How is that?
It was a very difficult balancing act.
A lot of criticism?
Fortunately, in Marshfield, we had a lot of community support, real strong support of the community, because we've done a lot of good work there, and they appreciate that. So I think it was easier for us than for some people that worked in other parts of the country or in major cities. Mm-hmm. Much easier for us. But there was still, there were people protesting the police.
And what were those protests like?
There was a Back the Blue rally that had about 1,000 people at it in Marshfield. And across the street, there was probably 40 people holding signs, and we had to set up ground rules ahead of time. You stay on this side of the street, they'll stay on this side of the street. You park that side, they park on this side, no interaction. And the people that were protesting the police violated those ground rules, came over to us, specifically to me, and secretly recorded me complaining that these people didn't have a permit when in fact they didn't even need one.
So what did that mean?
They put that videotape out. Like I said, I'm not concerned about a permit, and just try to make me look bad.
And how did you make yourself look good in this situation?
By just doing the right thing, by making sure that everybody was safe on both sides of the street.
So you took a knee in one of these protests, right?
I did. It was George Floyd Vigil, I think they called it. They originally had it as Black Lives Matter, and it went back and forth, and the date changed, and the locations were changing. But it was going to be a big one. So I had to have every single police officer on duty, every single one of them. Mm-hmm. I had to go out and buy riot gear that we never had before. I spent about $60,000 in one day on that event to ensure everybody's safety. And I was there, and they said all those that have lost a loved one at the hands of police take a knee. So I did it for my father.
Right. So because there was a lot of nationwide, there was a lot of scrutiny on any police officer that took a knee. You saw in major cities, whenever a police officer or command staff took a knee, there was a lot of criticism, and the police should stay neutral and all this stuff. But you took a knee because you were actually protesting the murder of your father at the hands of 3 police officers. Fast forward. When did you decide to tell your story? How far after that?
It was during their difficult times during the protests. I said, now's the time. If I'm going to do it, I'm doing it now.
So who do you call? What do you do? I mean, tell us, you obviously want to reopen the case, right? Was that on your mind, or you just want to let people know?
No. At this point, I'm far more educated in the criminal justice system, police reports, investigations. I'm armed with all kinds of stuff that 18-year-old kid didn't have before. Mm-hmm. So I'm more ready now than ever before. I found all kinds of...
So this is what actually is all your research and everything you've done. Well, not all of it. I'm sure there's boxes upon boxes.
There is.
This is a Cliff Note version with the mugshot of your dad that unfortunate night. Navigate through what your path was then and where we're at now.
So just as I became obsessed with taking all the police exams and getting the highest score and working real hard, I did the same thing in my father's case. I found all kinds of things that weren't answered, sloppy police work, mistakes in the state pathologist reports. And I said, if this was to happen today, there'd be a totally different outcome.
So you've got some pretty good connections. You know, you deal with the district attorney, especially in Plymouth County. You know a lot of state police investigators. You know the system. To your point, do you go to the DEA and say,
I did.
I want to reopen this case?
I did.
And I would guarantee you they're like, well, that was 35 years ago. You know, the police report said no one was ever charged. Did you get the runaround?
No, they were pretty good because I presented evidence to them that things weren't done right. Mm-hmm. And they said, okay, if it deserves a second look, we're going to do it. And they did. They launched an investigation into it. They sent out a fresh set of state police officers. But the whole thing depends upon the manner of death. So when you look at a death certificate.
Well, the medical examiner determined how your father died.
Well, so there's cause of death, which I believe is correct.
Right.
But then there's manner of death. And manner of death can either be natural, suicide, accidental, homicide, you know. So initially the medical examiner said undetermined. Then the state pathologist said natural. So in order for this to be a criminal case, it has to be either undetermined or homicide, that would be your only options.
So multiple hematomas, I think his spleen was ruptured.
That's right.
Right? Perforated bowel,
mm-hmm.
Multiple head trauma. And those are natural causes?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I knew it, and I just needed somebody to believe it.
So the DA, O'Malley at the time, 1987, could care less.
As far as he was concerned, the case was closed.
You're more educated. You bring it to the DA. They set a whole new, fresh set of eyes on that. And what are they saying? I mean, you're having these conversations. And look, the police work is more sophisticated right now. There's a lot more technology involved. You're going through this investigation. Meanwhile, where are the other three officers? You have the officer in charge, who she later became the chief of police in Coverup, retired, right? Where are the other two? What were their careers like after this?
Both of them retired. One of them was charged with, falsifying a report or something like that. So one of them's in Florida.
That's just the one he got caught with. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of them's in Florida and one of them's down the Cape now. All three of them are still alive.
Still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And do they have any inkling that, I know one of them has an inkling that you're pursuing this. Do the other two, have you ever had any interaction with those two officers?
I have not, but I know that the state police have reached out to them, and they did try to interview them.
So currently right now, there is an investigation going on, and it's been going on for how long?
It's been going on for probably 3 years.
Okay, where are we at with this right now?
So I met with the medical examiner's office with my attorney probably 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have much to say, because initially they sent me a letter saying, yeah, we're not going to change anything. So I want to have a meeting.
This is the Plymouth County DA?
No, this is the medical examiner's office here in Boston.
Yep.
So
and they've been scrutinized recently, right?
Yes. It's not just recently. It's been an ongoing thing.
And the most recent cases are the
Sandra Birchmore,
where police officers in a town that groomed a 15-year-old girl, who one of the officers is being detained right now for murder, where they originally the medical examiner deemed it a suicide of a 22, 21-year-old girl, and who was groomed for about 12 years by the police. It's my understanding. Same county that your dad was brutally beaten.
A different county.
Different county.
Same medical examiner's office.
Examiner. Wow, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that reluctant to change that from a suicide to a homicide. But the DA yeah, the DA is pursuing homicide charges.
Well, I think because the federal government got involved, right?
Right.
Right. So it's been 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. So we met with the medical examiner's office. I reviewed everything with them. I said, I'm the best witness you have in the case, because I'm the only one that's still alive. And this is what I witnessed. This is what was told to me. And this
Other than the 3 cops.
That's true. They'd be the real witnesses.
Right.
So
you
So they said that the case, we're not going to change anything. And I said, well, did you read the police reports? No. You didn't read any of the police reports because we're claiming that police brutality caused those injuries. And, oh, no, I hadn't looked at those. I said, well, I think you should look at those. And I asked to see the autopsy photos. Oh, you sure you want to do that? I said, yeah, I do want to see them. And we looked at the autopsy photos.
35 years later.
Yeah, I'm looking at them for the first time.
What is that emotionally like for you?
I'm sure some people wouldn't be able to handle it, but I mean, in my profession, I deal with stuff like this. So yeah, it was difficult to see my father dead on a table all cut up, but it was important to have that exam done for justice to prevail, but it still hadn't. So I spoke with them about, look, all these injuries, right? He's laid up in bed. It's the perfect setting for blood clots, pulmonary embolism. And that's what did it. That was the cause of death. And the manner of death was a beating. How else can you explain it?
And what are they saying?
Oh, you know what? I agree, that, the medical examiner made some mistakes, and some of it was not the medical examiner, the other guy that looked at him, drawing a blank on his name right now. The pathologist. Yeah, he's made some mistakes, and, he was relying on speculation. Nothing to a medical degree of certainty, speculation. I said, well, can you look at this again and read the police reports for the first time, please? Yes, absolutely. This is around Thanksgiving, after the holidays. The holidays are coming up. Just give us a little time. 2 years later, I'm still waiting. Haven't heard a word.
And they have to look at you because you have to deal with them in different venues and everything else. What are you hoping to achieve in this whole thing?
For people to be held accountable for what happened, for the truth to come out. This wasn't natural. It's obvious. It was much easier to get away with things in 1987 than it is now. If this would have happened today, I think it's a slam dunk.
But it's safe to say your story you're telling here today is not one of, focused on vengeance. It's about holding people accountable for their actions, but also turning a negative into a positive. I think often 2 times in society, people who have tough situations in their life look to make excuses on why they're not being successful and make excuses on why they're having troubles in their life. I think this is a great story, and I hope and pray that you get the result that you not only want, but you deserve. What are you looking for in this whole thing? Closure? Or are you looking for accountability? Are you looking for people to understand how difficult it is for certain people that are victims that don't get any justice? What is it?
I think it's all of it, Sean. I really do. First and foremost, obviously, I want my father's name cleared. I want the medical examiner to change the manner of death from natural, because it certainly isn't. It's everything but that. Mm-hmm. I want the people that did that to him to be held accountable. I want this to be a lesson for other people not to treat people that way, other police officers. I mean, times have changed. Policing has gotten much better, much more professional. The training's better. So this could be a story that is about perseverance. It's about, life could bring you down 2 different roads, the right path or the wrong path. And it's about, all right, look, just because something bad happens doesn't mean you have to make it worse by doing something bad. You can make it better. You can be bitter or you can be better, right? Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately, what do I want? I want to help people. I want to help the profession. I want to professionalize it. what would my father want? My father would not want me dead or in jail.
Well, your father is clear what he wants. Protect the name with everything you've got.
That's right.
That's because that's all we've got. We don't have much, but we've got our name. And, you know, to your point earlier, you know, your father was a good man.
He was
hardworking man.
You know, he was the greatest man. He never laid a hand on me ever. I was very, very kind-hearted, gentle, good person.
So just circling back, his second wife, who caused a lot of this, where was she? What was her role in this whole thing? Where was she over the last 35 years?
She so he married her. He was 45, so she was 30. I think he was going through like a midlife crisis. He bought a
friend of mine told me when I was single, recently divorced, that, you know, don't date women that are below freezing. And I never knew what that meant. I said, what do you mean below freezing? He goes, 32 and under. Stay 32 and above.
Okay. That's good advice.
So where
did you tell Belichick that?
Yeah, he clearly didn't get that memo. What was her whole role in this? 30 years old. You said she was 30 years old.
Yeah. So, you know, I think she has a lot to play in this that never came out. Not long after my father died, she suddenly died of brain cancer.
No kidding.
And I have a crazy photograph in here of the two of them together, and it'd be all right to pull it out.
Sure, absolutely.
I think it speaks volumes.
You think it was a little calmer?
Yeah. You know, this is their wedding photo, and this is not altered. This is 100% legit.
Oh, wow, huh? Quite an age difference.
Look, what does the orange tell you?
Yeah. That was the wedding photo, huh?
Yep.
Should have been a sign.
I think it is a sign.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is a day in the life like for Chief Tavares? You've got a pretty big police department, very, very good reputation, high standards. What's your day like?
Well, my day starts with reading the Herald, the Globe, and the Patriot Ledger, reading all the police reports and the log while the news is on at the same time, and then hitting the gym, working out, and getting into work, getting the job done. At the end of the day, going up and seeing my mom, checking on her every single day because she's in poor health. Coming home to the family and the dog, and relaxing in front of the TV.
So you've got one son.
Yes.
What is he doing right now?
He's a sophomore at Mass Maritime.
Okay, and he knows his grandfather's story. You didn't tell him initially, but when you decided to come out and tell your story, that's when you sat your son down and told him.
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what was his reaction to that?
I think he didn't know what to think. It was, I mean, it's a pretty crazy story if you really get into it.
And you have similar upbringings. I mean, you're an only child. Your son's an only child. You know, he's got to sit back and think, you know, how important you are to his life and how important your dad was to yours. And, you know, you got to protect that with everything you got, especially the name. And I'm sure you passed that on to him as well.
I did.
Great. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. Is there anything else you want to say in closure? Is there anything you want to say as far as your vigilance is going to stay steady in this case or anything else? Is there anybody you want to call out that needs to be called out? I mean, the one thing that I want to achieve out of this whole thing is to make sure that we tell your story and make sure that the people that are responsible for this know that this is not going away.
No. When I was 18 years old, when it happened, you can look at any of the newspaper clips. I said, I will never stop the pursuit of justice for my father, and I won't. So I will call out the medical examiner's office and say, why haven't I heard from you? Mm-hmm. This is pretty obvious. I pointed out all the mistakes, all the errors. So can we do something about this and make it right?
Well, I think in light of everything that's gone on over the last couple of years, you've got the Karen Reed case, you've got the Birchmore case, you've got many other scrutinized cases and shoddy investigations going on. I mean, we should really take a look at what happened in 1987 and compare it to where we are today. It doesn't seem like it's too different of a system.
I agree.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.